you make me feel seen. And I think that's the point of the work that I do.
Neptune in Pisces is literally like the screen, and it's social media, and it's us interacting, but like there's this distance between us, you know? It's not, you can't touch, you can't see, you can't feel the energetic vibration.
I still like having human interaction, even if it scares me. It's like, it's what makes us alive, and we're here today, and we run off of each other's energy.
Just in life as humans, sometimes we have to figure out if it's going to be more painful to stay and accommodate other people or move on and transform.
It was in me whether I wanted it or not, but it was the only way that I felt I could be true to myself, was connecting to this work.
I know your Pisces sun is this deep wisdom, and it's ethereal, it is intuitive, it's spiritual, it's ancestral.
So I was just like, I'm gonna go full time. And it was also like this big pivot. I knew I had to take this leap of faith, and everyone's like, you're crazy, that's a bad idea, you need to get a job, you need to do this. And I was like, this is my job, and I'm gonna make it work.
Absolutely. I love this because I'm hearing your Aries talk right now, and it's so powerful. So just stepping into your individuality and your authenticity, and, you know, knowing if it's a yes or a no, and just going for it. Welcome to the COSME Astrology Podcast. I am your host, Lisa Warman, and I'm so glad you're here. You were born at this time for a reason. The energy of this moment, its beauty, its transformation, its challenges, is uniquely aligned with your soul's path. You are here to live a full life of meaning, growth, and deep self-discovery, and astrology is a guide to help you get there. On this podcast, you'll hear from some of the brightest minds in astrology, along with inspiring thought leaders and voices from the wellness space. The intention behind COSME is to foster true community. That's why each episode is recorded with a live studio audience, because I believe the most powerful conversations happen when we come together in person. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. You're here for a reason. Welcome to the COSME Astrology Podcast. I am your astrologer and host, Lisa Warman, and I have the absolute pleasure and honor of sitting in conversation with Marcella Kroll today. Marcella, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so this is a new series of the podcast. In case you've been to the podcast in the past, what we're doing today is I am casting Marcella's chart, and we're looking at her chart and how she actually embodies her chart in her work. Astrology to me is embodiment. It is lived experience. And a lot of times we can look at our chart to see how it's playing out in real life, how the transits are playing out in real life, and how our natal aspects are playing out in real life. You know, I use astrology as a tool every single day. I use it for my health. I use it for my finances. I use it for business. I use it for relationships. And it's truly a non-woo-woo, very simple tool that you can use. And so I encourage everybody to do so. But yeah, today we're going to be looking at Marcella's chart and how that's playing out for her. Now, Marcella is an author, a diviner, a tarot reader, a healer. I mean, so many things. So it's just such an honor to have her here. So Marcella, do you want to explain a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what your work is like?
I'm like, where to begin? I am an artist first and foremost, and I do readings. I create tools, books, decks, classes, and ways of showing people how to connect with their own divinity and expression, and how to kind of work with that to navigate, the physical world, but also those liminal spaces with confidence, or perhaps kind of find what their unique path is. I've been working professionally as a full-time tarot reader medium for like 16 years. However, that's kind of shifting right now for me. I'm in a very gooey space of trying to figure out how I'm reforming myself. And yeah, I would say I've always ridden the liminal space as my comfort zone, being multiracial, being autistic, never quite fitting in, but never really wanting to, but also still wanting to connect. So a lot of the work that I like to do now, art's always been my heart and soul, but then the spiritual connection has been as well. Like even as a young kid, I was always connected to the invisible. So I think it's been a real dream come true to be able to bring those worlds together in the physical. And I get to do that for work. So that's exciting.
So exciting and beautiful. If you have not experienced Marcella's work, I use her decks in all my sound baths, and they're very potent. And aside from that, I have had the opportunity to be a part of Marcella's workshops that she facilitates. And it's really hard to put a label on your work. I've really realized that, because it is just this deep self-discovery, and it is healing, it is understanding, it's meditating, it's connecting with ancestors. I mean, it's so much. So, and it's also art. I mean, your oracle or your tarot deck and your oracle deck that you have are just really amazing and potent. So, yeah, you're welcome. Your work is, how would we say? It's just multifaceted. It's really amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think that there is this level of, some people surfacely might look at some of my work as like, oh, this is for newbies, this is for beginners. When I don't think of it like as this kind of competition to be the most excelled at something. I like to be an instigator and an initiator. And I even say, like, with any of the things, like, I like there to be accessibility. What you do with it and how you develop it is up to you. But like, I can just bring you the tool and you take it where you want to take it. So, and it's the same thing with like the classes and stuff. Like, am I reinventing the wheel? Am I giving these, like, people have asked me to like sometimes mentor them or train them. And I'm like, I can't train you to be you. You know, I can invite you to be you in this space. I can give the invitation or the permission. And I think one of the things that really has spoken to me that I've learned on this book tour, actually, the thing that a few people, like in the different spaces that I went to, several cities, was the response was, you make me feel seen. And I think that's the point of the work that I do. It's not about, I'm going to be the expert, because I don't think I'm an expert. I'm always learning, but I'm here to help you feel seen. And I'm here to help you activate and see yourself instead of the projection that other people maybe want you to be, or even you thought you needed to be. So yeah.
I love that. There's definitely a rawness to your work too that kind of strips the layers down and helps people to really understand who they are authentically without society, without the pressure of even family, friends, you know, all the things. So, all right, speaking of your work, you just released this beautiful, amazing book, Healing the Liminal. So do you want to talk a little bit about it and the inception of it, how it came about, and what it is?
Sure. So I had been self-publishing. I have 3 oracle decks and a tarot deck, and I had been self-publishing for 9 years. And then I was approached by someone who asked if I wanted an agent. I said, sure. I don't know what that does, but okay. And then they basically got me meetings with a couple of publishers that wanted to take on my decks. And I said yes. And then one of the meetings, the editors asked me, like, what else are you working on? And I had mentioned this class that I had taught a couple of times, once during kind of peak pandemic, and then one other time in person in Denver, Colorado, and it was called Healing the Liminal. And I wanted to create a course or a 3-day kind of class where we could talk about healing when you don't fit into a particular category or box. You know, like I had kind of this idea of I'm growing up, again, being multiracial, being autistic, like I would go into spaces and not feel super like I belonged. Or like even like I got into witchcraft as a teen, and it felt really like, okay, this is it. This is where I belong. But there was things I couldn't understand or get through, you know, it never quite felt right. And I would go to the spaces of like where I'm a descendant of, you know, they'd be like, what are you doing here? Anyway, I think there's a lot of erasure in healing, because if we feel like we don't belong, we kind of go, okay, well, I don't get to work on this part of myself, or parts of us get kind of suppressed or they disintegrate. So I started this class to kind of work on like, how do we kind of come back to our own healing and honor our ancestors when maybe we don't have the roadmaps to them necessarily, but how do we do it with appreciation, not appropriation? How do we do it with a way of still finding healing and connection? Because it's still very much us. And the things that come up with that when you're constantly shoved around. And they were like, great, let's make a book. I was like, okay. They're like, you have, I think it was in like March of 2022, I signed the contract. And they said, you have to get the first draft by January 2023. And I was like, okay, great. I couldn't write. And then I like could not write. I was like, how am I going to, this is not, I kept trying. And then I knew that year I was going to Egypt for Egyptian initiations. I was working kind of periodically with a Hermetic magic school in Los Angeles, teaching classes. Sometimes I would do past life regression there and all that. And I was like, okay, I'm going on this tour, this journey of magical initiations. I'm not going to be able to write anything until I come back. And it was kind of getting scary because the deadline was looming and I hadn't written anything. And I said, okay, can I have an extension until March? And they said, sure. And then...
And this is March 2022, right?
March 2023.
Okay.
Yeah, it was when they extended it. The first draft was due.
Okay.
So I go to Egypt for all of December of 2022. But it was on the Nile. I had been having these soul retrieval experiences, memories when I was in different places, like in Karnak and like a couple of places. And over my life, I'd have dreams about this different times in Egypt, but I never put them all together until I was there. Anyway, we were sailing. I was on the Nile for four days, and I just opened my phone, like camera, and I just started channeling this story and putting it all together. This story, because this name came to me, and I remember looking at one of the women I was traveling with, and I was like, Ysidro. She was like, what? I was like, I don't know. I just heard Ysidro. And then I looked it up, and it meant gifts of Isis. I was like, what? It's just a lot of like, okay. So I wrote it, and then when I came back, under the advice of a friend, she's like, why don't you upload it to YouTube, privately, and then download the transcript? I was like, bingo. I did that. And then I was able to I went through and I I read it, I edited it. And then I was like, this is how I'm going to write this book. And coming back, I was in this trance state every night because of the time change. I would be waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning, and I'd be like, because of the mediumship, I'd be like, who am I talking to tonight or today? And it would be very clearly a relative or someone, or something would come through and be like, we're talking about this. And I would record myself and then upload it and then download it, the transcript, and then edit that way. Because I think for me before, I was trying to write and edit at the same time, because I'd be sitting there and I'd be like, oh, no, I don't like that. No, I don't like that. But when I got out of the way and my mediumship was able to come through, it was like making art again. It was like I got out of the way and allowed the information to share itself. And then I wrote that book. It was 51,000 words in 50 days.
Wow.
But I couldn't write. It was a little bit frightening how 11th hour it felt, but like that was the inception of it.
That is amazing. So I want to break this down a little bit astrologically because just the timeline of this is truly fascinating. So when Marcella decided to sign the contract in March of 2022, right? We were experiencing the Taurus Scorpio eclipses. So when we experience eclipses, we have big beginnings and big endings. So it's kind of like a new chapter is coming into our lives. Now, Marcella has Taurus ruling her third house. Third house is communication, it's writing, it's the internet, it's books, it's book publishing. So we know that this was the inception and a start. Yes.
I was just like heard like a flat, like a light bulb moment, because that was also my grandmother who raised me was a Taurus. She passed away shortly after, like right in that window. Like it was almost like I was like, oh, she knows I'm okay now.
Oh,
she can go, because she was hanging on. She was 100 and almost gonna be. She was gonna be 101.
wow.
Yeah,
That's wild and and beautiful. A lot of times too during eclipses we do see people make an exit. It's a portal, it's an opening, and they decide to go. So yeah, that's pretty on point and on time. So another thing is there's something in there's a technique in astrology. It's called perfection years. So what this is you look at the chart, and each house is a different theme, and basically each year you're born is a different house. So like the first house is our 0 year, the second house is our first year, and you just keep going around the zodiacal wheel your whole entire life. So you have a different perfection year. Now, with Marcella, she was in her 11th house perfection year in 2023 when she went to when you went to Egypt
in 2022.
In 2022.
Yes.
Okay. And when you started to basically, I don't even know what word to use. I don't want to say download, but you
channeling.
Channel her book. So her 11th house is ruled by Sagittarius and Jupiter, and that rules the 9th house in astrology. So we're talking about long distance travel, foreign travel. Jupiter is expansion. So this is really just on point for Marcella. And again, the whole reason I'm telling you guys this is because you can use astrology to really track these things in your life and to see where you're at. Now, we're looking at this in hindsight, and I actually do like to look at astrology like that because I like to track certain things in my life. I'm like, okay, in whatever, junior high when I lost my best friend or whatever, what was I experiencing? So, it's good to look at it like that. So that's how I'm kind of looking at it now. But I do want to fast forward to the release date of your book, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, Marcella, you released Healing the Liminal on February 11th, 2025, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so I just used an 8 a.m. time because I wasn't sure, but I was like, okay, it was probably around that time. Okay. So it's really interesting because in Marcella's birth chart, first off, let me say Marcella has her sun in Pisces at 29 degrees, her moon in Aries at 6 degrees, and she has Aquarius rising at 11 degrees. So in Marcella's birth chart, she does have a sun, Mercury, moon conjunction. The sun is at 29 degrees Pisces, her Mercury is at 3 degrees Aries, and her moon is at 6 degrees Aries. So the fascinating thing is her book's birth chart also has a sun Mercury conjunction at 23 degrees Aquarius, 24 degrees Aquarius. So they both share that conjunction. And in astrology, the sun, the moon, Venus, they kind of all move together in the sky. They share a similar speed, not always right on point with each other, but it is similar. But you did not plan the release date. It got pushed back, you said, right?
Pushed back twice.
Okay.
They kept delaying it.
So fascinating. So you and your book share a Sun-Mercury conjunction in a very tight orb. Another thing about your book is has Venus at 4 degrees Aries, and your Mercury is at 3 degrees Aries. And this is in the second house. So I really love this for your synastry chart with your book, because you are basically expressing your values through communication. This could be a way to make money. It's in the second house, like a job, your assets, your work, and it's conjunct your Mercury. You're able to express yourself, your individuality, and who you are. So it's really, truly amazing looking at this together. Now, I was wondering, when you were writing this, you said 50 days was how long it took.
Yeah.
So when did you wrap it up and finish it up and send it off?
I think so. I had sent in the first draft, and then it took like another few months to kind of going back and forth with the editor and editors, I should say. That was a whole other experience. So it took I would say it took about 6 months after that.
Okay.
For the final draft,
So maybe around October or okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really fascinating point too, because in October 2023, 2022, 2023, we were experiencing, we started to experience the Aries Libra eclipses. So again, Libra or eclipses bring really big beginnings, really big endings. Now, Marcella's moon is in Aries and her Mercury is in Aries. And so these eclipses were really starting to stimulate her Mercury and her moon. And Mercury is all about communication. Moon is about your inner being. It's about your inner compass. And it's really about expressing who you are. And it's in Aries. So this was a new inception on the way that you're communicating. And I know you've written a book before, but this is kind of just pointing to a new way of writing a book.
This is the most personal thing I've ever written. I've written like books and zines and things like that, but they were more instructional.
Mm-hmm.
Or they have kind of like a level of detachment from them. Whereas this is very personal, including even being able to be involved with like the cover and doing all the art, which is also kind of rare. With a lot of publishers, they usually have their own, they do their own cover design, they do their own thing. They don't let you have that much involvement. So,
and was it a preference for you to do all of that because it was so personal to you? You wanted full control of your book.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely things that were out of my control with it, which was hard. That was like a huge, I just feel like that's my North Node Libra, is like learning how to work with others, and trusting that process. But but I think that because it was so personal and no one's done a book like this format before, and no one has really written about this. I've not seen anything, and that was part of why they wanted me to do this book. Was there's not much work out there that covers this kind of broad topic. Things are so niche, and and the whole premise of it being about not fitting in, there's some books here and there that kind of touch on that, but there's no they also just kind of are like, well, what do you think about this?
So Marcella, you do have Aquarius rising in your chart. And with Aquarius rising, there's always this expression that wants to come through that is, we would say, counterculture, that's different from the rest, that wants to express differently from the norm, that can actually see the norm and understand kind of where the downfalls are in it and be able to push forward. So I just want to talk about your Aquarius rising really quick, and then we'll go into some other stuff. But do you feel like that comes through in your work? Because personally, when I've experienced your work, I know your Pisces sun is this deep wisdom, and it is, it's ethereal, it is intuitive, it's spiritual, it's ancestral. I felt it all when I've worked with you. And it kind of brings you back in time in a way, or to a deeper place in yourself that I really cannot explain. But then I think of your Aquarius rising, and you are such a forward thinker. And I think you pick up on things pretty quickly and see what's going to happen next from the past. It's kind of like this beautiful dance between Pisces and Aquarius. So I just wanted to know from you if you feel like that comes out in your work at all, or if you, um, if you see that in yourself.
I think more by trial and error, in a way. Like, it's so interesting, like, to think of it in this way. Sometimes I think about things and I can look at them in hindsight and be like, oh, you were really kind of far off into the future with that one.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, people are looking at me like I'm insane. They're like, why would you do that? But I think there's this part of me that has like their fishing line out into the future and knowing like, okay, I'm having to trust that, like, I can't give you the linear reasons why, but this is the way to go. Except for that. And then also I laugh at my Aquarius rising because I feel so adversarial sometimes or contrarian with things. And then I'm like looking at it, I'm like, am I being contrarian or am I thinking about alternative ways to do things? One of my biggest pet peeves is like lack of efficiency. And I don't know if that's the Aquarius or if it's all the Aries, but I get very like upset when I'm like, why are we working like not smarter and just harder all the time? Like, I don't understand why we're going 80 different routes when we could just go that way. But even like with this, I try to, it's an interesting thing to be like, I'm going to make this book and it's not the end all, the be all, but I'm the person to make this book. And maybe this will be the pivot or the starting point for other people to make material like this. Maybe it will inspire other people to think about their future and how they're going to hold it for future legacies or generations. And maybe this will be the seed, which can be frustrating because there's like, we were talking earlier about, I was like, there's a lot of like not getting your flowers, but people coming to me and being like, you inspired me to do this, this, and this. And they're doing really well and they're doing great. And I'm happy for them. But there's also this kind of like burn of like, I've had people tell me artwork that I thought I had art shows and like 5 years later, you have no idea how impactful that was. I'm like, why didn't you tell me in the moment? Because I was having a mental breakdown for like the whole month it was up thinking nobody cared. And it's a really similar thing with the work. I feel like a lot of times I'll put stuff out and I have to learn to be okay with not knowing the future of it or or where it's going to land. And then there's the bratty part of me that's like, like, but I want to know, I want to be acknowledged.
Totally. Yeah. And you know what? For those of you who are new to astrology, Aquarius is the trendsetter. So being able to set a trend, a way, a certain thing, and be one of the first ones to do it. And of course, people are going to pick up on that, and then eventually you don't get your flowers and, people kind of bite your style. And that's part of having Aquarius rising. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, even like I started doing readings full time, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. It was like survival.
Yeah.
And in 2008, I was like doing readings and I had my little sandwich board and people would be like, you're crazy. Da, da, da. Like, I can't believe you're doing that. And I'm like, or they'd come up sheepishly to me and be like, can I get a reading? And now like, you can't, like I would get yelled at the Rose Bowl. I mean, I remember getting yelled at by like these really intense Christian ladies, like, how dare you? Only God can tell me what the future is. And I was like, really? Okay. But like, and people going through all of the ropes of like the bureaucracy stuff with it, like making it a business and like, having people come to me and then like, you see people kind of like trailblazing by and I'm like, wait, what? And now I'm at this point too, where it's like, people are like, oh, you should be charging this much. You should be doing this for your work. You should be doing that. And I'm like, I actually just want to blow it all up. I don't want it. I don't want it anymore. I want to keep doing what I'm doing, but in a different way. And so, yeah, it's been an interesting, it's an interesting cycle to see that consistently throughout my life. I mean, even down I know it's so goofy, but like even like my hand tattoos, I remember when I got my hands tattooed, people were like, oh my God, you are nuts. You are crazy. And then I remember this little kid in Venice comes up, he's like a teenager. He's like, oh, did you get that because of Rihanna? And I was like, I had it before Rihanna. Oh. I just remember being so mad.
Yeah.
I was like, Rihanna probably saw me on Pinterest. Yeah. Like I was so mad, you know, like Tumblr.
Yeah.
When people told me I was nuts for tattooing my hands.
And that's the thing. That is truly an Aquarius rising thing. You are going to set the trend. People will pick up on it and you will not get all your flowers. But lucky for you, you do have an Aries moon. So you know what's up. You know your own. You know who you are inside and out. And that's a really beautiful thing. Now, Marcella, you have done a lot, in my opinion, in your life. And, you know, you're an author, you've created tarot decks, and they're all just so potent. And I mean, they're really amazing tools to use. Now, you mentioned stepping into a little bit of newness and blowing it all up. And we just wrapped up the Aries Libra eclipses, in fact. And I know that those eclipses were hitting your moon, your Mercury, your Venus, your South Node, your Chiron, just, you know, like doing all the things. And that was in your second house. And that second house it's your career, it's your work, it's your assets. So again, when we experience these eclipses, they start to change things. Think of the ocean, the ebbs and the flows, you know? So this kind of created a newness that wants to come through for you. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because you have been in your current state of work for about 14 years, right? And that's a Neptune cycle also. So we know you probably stepped into that when Neptune was like ingressing into Pisces.
Like January 8th of 2008.
Okay.
I have the little business certificate. That's
I love it. So that was a little bit before, but you really did have a Neptune and Pisces cycle. And this was going through your first house. So the first house is who we are, how we show up in this world. It's our body. It's how people see us. So that's how people saw you and see you still. But now there's a little bit of change on the horizon. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit and see if you're open to explaining what that feels like now, because now we have Neptune going into Aries. So Neptune is going to hit eventually. It's going to take 14 years to cruise through the whole thing, but your Mercury, your moon, Venus, your South Node, and Chiron. So this is your communication, your inner feelings, your values, your money, your talents that maybe you came to this world with, your dharma, your karma, and also how you've taken pain into purpose. That's what all of those planets and asteroids are. So yeah, where are you at? What's up?
well, that cycle started like last year? Or
kind of, yeah, but now Neptune is really, you know, in Aries. So yeah.
Well, I would say, I mean, a lot of stuff really started to shift gears when I left. I moved to Tucson in March of 2024, officially. And right before that, I like got rid of 90% of my belongings. And it wasn't the first time I've done that, but it was the first time I'd done it in a while. So it was a little frightening, acquiring all these physical extensions of yourself and letting them go. And moving, I knew it was time to change and time to go. And moving here, all of a sudden, I would say like my career and my work as a reader and like being known for that, like was really all I was in Long Beach and in LA. That was everything. And the rest of my life was like dehydrated. Like, so I was just working all the time. And then moving here, it was suddenly like my work just went, and all these other areas of my life started getting watered. Like my personal connections, connections with like just home, everything I was like not working through. Like I was disconnected from even like physical, like nothing felt like, the only thing where I felt like I was full or flush was the psychic work. But moving here, that all shifted. And in that, my values have shifted. What's important to me has shifted. My relationships are going through this huge, and not just personal relationships, but relationships with clients or like the type of people I work with, like all of that is changing. And it's like my physical body cannot do it the old way anymore. And I was having this moment, particularly with this Venus retrograde, because people always talk about Venus retrograde, the exes come back, this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that for me at all. It was more of like this old version of myself came back and was like, we need to get on this. We need to get doing this and this and this. And I was like, I don't know her anymore. And I have to like goodbye, like to that, you know, but not in a like, get out of here, I'm gonna pretend you never existed, but more of like, I can't meet people with who I am today and with the same expectations and the same, like, even people I love very dearly that I thought would be coming with me on this, you know, I just turned 48. I'm like, okay, we're approaching this next half. I thought like there would be certain people that would be with me the long haul. And even as of like by the winter, I don't know, like these very firm kind of like, yeah, no, we're not doing that anymore. And it was really upsetting.
Wow.
But also it was more upsetting for me to fawn or go back into let me fix it, let me make it better for you mode.
That is so important and potent because, you know, just in life as humans, sometimes we have to figure out if it's going to be more painful to stay and accommodate other people or move on and transform, right?
Yeah. And I think that the past, like me, which was not even that long ago, like even up until like early moving here, like I would immediately be like, oh my God, you're uncomfortable. I can feel it. Let me make it better for you. Even if it's the other person was being terrible to me or the other person was like, didn't deserve that. Like I would still be shifting into that. And now when I'm like, okay, do I need to like make it feel better or do I hold the resentment? And that's what's changed for me. So I was like, I can't live in this resentment. You know, it's just for moments of keeping the peace and making sure I'm not hurting other people's feelings. And, you know, because that's the thing. I'm Pisces and I'm very sensitive and I'm super sensitive and super intuitive. But then my fire can come out and it can be very hard for people. Or it could be, I have to work on my own reactions because I'm like, what, you want to square up? Like, and I'm like, wait. Like, I have to remember, like, I'm not in, like, I grew up in a really rough environment, you know, like you had to be tough, you know, and it's like to immediately like go like, okay, I have to be conscientious of where I'm honoring my values still and I'm not bulldozing them, but I'm still stating my boundaries. And it doesn't have to be my problem in that way of like, I don't know. I think I used to think it had to be one way or the other. Well, you hurt me and either I hurt you back or I suffer. And there's no nuance in that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. And, you know, with Neptune moving into Aries, Saturn's going to, you know, conjoin Neptune really soon. And so you're moving into a new chapter of your life. And it sounds, you know, like maybe you're in the liminal space a little bit where you're not quite sure what it's going to be. But I do want to say when Neptune moves into Aries and Saturn's in the mix, Neptune is the dream. It is how we daydream. It is what we daydream about. It's how we bring down the manifestations and the downloads from the ethers into reality because Saturn is there. So it's actually how we bring our dreams into reality. So that's coming up. And this is going to hit your second house and all of these planets, your South Node and Chiron. And I just can't help but think that this is going to be such a potent time for you. At some point, it's going to oppose Pluto in your natal chart. And I'm really curious to see what happens for you during that time. But Marcella, do you have a dream that you would want to share with us that maybe is coming through, or something that you really want to step into? I know you're an artist,
Yeah.
and I've seen a lot of that from you lately, but
I think there's this thing, and I don't know if it's like LA kind of soured me in certain ways with things, where I have a lot of dreams and I have a lot of ideas, and I like to bring them into the physical, but there's also a lot of like promises and then they poof disappear. And that's been really heartbreaking. So it's kind of this weird thing. Actually, since 2020, I've stopped I used to talk a lot about what I'm visioning, what I'm doing. And then I was like, I started doing things in secret until it was ready to be birthed. I never did that before. I would always be like a blabbermouth about my ideas, and then it didn't happen. I would get really devastated. I will say that I've been pulling back on the personal sessions, not because I'm quitting or I'm done, but there's just been a multiple stop signs or roadblocks to it lately. And I feel like I am feeling in the liminal of what is next. I know it's related to more expression, more art, more creation. In the fall, I did my first like big LA gallery show where I made like art as magic, like art as portals, art as talismans. Like that's the other thing I really love. I love magic. Like I love magic, the practical and the ritual of it. And why not bring it into like these physical pieces that we either wear or we have in our homes? So I feel like that was kind of like the start of this. Like I want to kind of bring more of that kind of thing to life. I also have another deck coming out in February that I made this summer with my friend Adam, who is one of my magician friends. We went to Egypt together, and it is a departure from my other work in the sense that Adam's a tattooer and he did all the artwork, but I got to really nerd out on the booklet. It's like a lot of the work I do, people are like, oh, it's so simple. It's so this. And there is a reason why it's that way. There's a reason why. It's not because I'm dumb, because that's the assumption is, oh, it's simple. You don't really know what you're talking about. I'm like, actually, you don't want me to go into what I'm talking about. And the point of it being simple is so that you find your connection to it. There are keywords, there are meanings. So when people say, oh, I lost the booklet, I'm like, great. Find your own meaning. Like, but this deck that's coming out, it's called the, oh my gosh, Initiation. It's like the Initiator's Oracle. It is the full, like, next level of kind of like the work that I want to do and create. So it's more in depth. It's not like, also I can't stand when things feel like so clinical, but it has more of the knowledge in it, and the, like, if you want to go deeper, it's like for magicians by magicians. So that's a lot of the work that I want to move into as I'm speaking it a lot. I'm realizing, like, even with the classes I'm teaching, or even speaking at certain things, like I'm speaking at, there's a witch summit that's happening in October in Phoenix, and I'm doing a lecture on psychic self-defense. And I want to dive deeper into things and reach, like I said, like, it's not that I'm forgetting about the one-on-one, but I need a bigger audience in the way of connecting to people in real life as well, not just on the internet. Because that's the other thing with my work through this Neptune and Pisces has been, I had a lot of growth through Instagram, social media. I need real contact. And I think that's really important for our humanity and society at, like, moving into the future, because we don't know what's on the screen now. The AI even, like, is very good. Like, you know, good. Like, it's a little like, oh, Psychic Samara said, but, and I'm not anti it, by the way. I'm just saying, like, I want to have the there's an entertainer part of me. I always used to joke when I was younger, I really wanted to be an entertainer. That dream got squashed really young, but I think with the right encouragement, it could have happened. I still like that. I still like having human interaction, even if it scares me. It's like, it's what makes us alive, and we're here today, and we run off of each other's energy. I've been in bands and stuff like that. Like, you know the difference when like the audience is into it or not, or if you're having a conversation and it's engaging, and there's just a different energy about being in person. So I would like more of those experiences.
Love that. I am all about that too. That's why COSME exists, you know? So with Neptune in Pisces, that's fascinating that you brought that up, because I always say that Neptune in Pisces is literally like the screen, and it's social media, and it's us interacting, but like there's this distance between us, you know? It's not, you can't touch, you can't see, you can't feel the energetic vibration. Some can. I mean, I'm not going to say I haven't given readings on Zoom, you know what I mean? Yeah. But still, like, there really is something to being in person. You just said so much, and it feels like you know that you're pivoting into something new. I got full body chills when you were talking about the psychic defense class, and I think that's super cool. But I want to ask, just because there's people in the audience and people who listen to this podcast who do work similar to this, and we go through many changes, you know, we have to pivot our work here and there. And a lot of times the work we're doing is coming from a passion. It's coming even from our karma. It's like, we know that we're here to do this. So do you have any advice for any of the listeners on like how to navigate through this without feeling like, it's a scary thing, or being okay to let go, you know, or just how to navigate through with grace even?
I'm not the lead person to talk about grace, but
okay.
I will say that I've done a lot of things and not gracefully at all.
Okay.
But I will say, I always like, there is this clear channel or feeling of like a full body yes to something when I'm supposed to do it. And even like with sacred symbols, the first incarnation of that deck came out in 2012, or I made it in 2012. It came out in 2013. And everything in my body was just like, keep doing, like, yes. It doesn't matter if people like it. It doesn't matter. There was this surety that it was so clear. Even though I was pitching it to publishers, it was being rejected left and right. But I was just like, I just got to keep doing it. And here we are now on the 4th edition. And there's like 22,000 copies in the world from the very start. And I think that listening to that full body yes was the only thing that got me going through a lot of things, because the ups and the downs are going to come. They always come. And even now I'm being like shook by it, because I had such an up for so long. And then I forgot what the down felt like. But it's just cycles. Mm-hmm. And that expansion and the contraction. And I tried to explain this to a couple of people I know, but like, they'll be like, oh, you're so prolific. I'm like, yeah, but you think I'm prolific, but you do not see the 7, 8, 9, 10 months where I am having a crisis mentally about my purpose, my worth, and how I'm not doing anything. And then I forget, oh, you're incubating. Mm. You're in data collection mode. You're in research and development mode. It's like, get out, go see some art, go interact, engage, because you don't just make up things out of thin air. You do it from being able to be connected. And I forget all the time, and I melt down and I freak out. Even like this last I was saying earlier, like I went into Home Goods on Broadway and was like, gonna get, I said, they're hiring. I'm like, okay, I'm getting an application. And there's nothing wrong with it. I was just like, this is it. My work is done. I'm never going to do anything ever again in my life. And then I tried to get a job at the herb store. I tried to get a job. I'm like making a resume. I haven't made a resume since 2007. And I was like, okay, your last job was a coffee shop and then you just had your business as a psychic for the last however many years. Who is going to hire you? Then I thought, oh, I'm going to go get training. I'm just going to say this. You're going to battle yourself and your fears throughout this whole process. Like, if you in your heart of hearts, like, feel this full-bodied yes, like, just go for it. Also, if you have to do something on the side in the meantime, that's okay too. Mm-hmm. Like, I think there's this obsession with, I think a lot of people get into this work, particularly because of the last 10 years, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to become famous. I'm going to be known. That's a different job. And you can do that with any medium. Are you passionate about what you're actually doing? Do you feel connected? There's nothing wrong with that either. I want to be famous. Then be famous. Go for it. Mm-hmm. But be honest and true about what is actually your, modus operandi. Like, what is your, what's driving you, And I always tell you, like, I didn't do this in the beginning, like, because I was being altruistic. I did this because I wanted to figure out what was wrong with me. Like, at 18, I overdosed and went to rehab, and I couldn't be friends with people that I was going to raves with and throwing parties with anymore. And I got an astrology book and started learning how to make a chart. And I got a deck of cards from my stepdad's mother, and I started doing little readings for myself. Years later, decades later, in my early 40s, I found out my grandmother and then my great-grandmother were seers. My grandmother was a tarot reader at Woodstock. I didn't know this growing up. So there's this element of, like, it was in me whether I wanted it or not, but it was the only way that I felt I could be true to myself was connecting to this work. So it was a long ramble, but I would say, if you're passionate, go for it. If you change your mind, that's okay. If you step into this work and you're like, this was cool, I just want to do it for my friends, that's fine. If you're like, I really like being in front of the camera, I want to do this, then do it. But also, there's no shame in having pivots or ups and downs. And I think we glorify, like, the big wins. And that can be an issue, I think.
Absolutely. I love this because I'm hearing your Aries talk right now, and it's so powerful. So just stepping into your individuality and your authenticity and, knowing if it's a yes or a no and just going for it. And yeah, there's always going to be highs and lows, ups and downs. I think you are graceful, I just want to say. So, yeah, you're very inspiring in that way. And another way that I just hear you and find you're so inspiring, and I see it in your birth chart, is when you have Aries in the second house, when Aries is ruling your second house, that is the signature of an entrepreneur. And this is something that I think you're so good at, because I just see you knowing your work, tuning into your work, putting it out there, and, that's you. And that's what you've done for the last 14 years. So when did you figure out that you were an entrepreneur? And when did you know that this is kind of your path and you're working for yourself?
I think being an entrepreneur, it's like skipped my mother, but like it runs in my mother's family. Like that whole side of the family, there are like Italian, Portuguese. Everyone was like, they had the family business was like a hair salon, and then they had 2 hair schools, and like everyone had a job because it was a big family. They all needed to like go get skilled at something. And I grew up in that, like every weekend with my grandmother. She would take me, and she was a hairdressing teacher. And then I would go play in the salon on Sunday when it was closed. And my other uncle would be doing the books. And then my other uncles would be doing like not so, I would say, legal things. They were Italian in Providence, Rhode Island. So they were doing shady things. But, that's a whole other thing. But I saw a lot of people, like, I knew from a young age that I wanted to be independent. And because my mother and like that kind of upbringing was really volatile and rough, and I had to take care of myself. And the adults weren't going to coddle you. So I knew at a young age, the moment I could work, I got not one job, I got two. And then that was at like 16. And then a year later, I started throwing raves. I mean, like I always was like, okay, now what? Now what? And so it's always been like that. I think the thing with the business end of the spiritual work was I never liked working for other people. My last job, I worked at the library, which was cool. I was a messenger clerk for a while, but then they laid off a bunch of people. So I had to go get another job. I ended up at a cafe. I'm not customer service. I was really good at going in at 5 a.m., opening the cafe up at like 6, and then I'd work until noon. And I was like the salty, like barista, whatever. But people would constantly come to me and tell me everything. Like the running joke was like, it's bartender syndrome. People just tell it. Like, I don't know why I'm telling you this. And then it would just be so intense. And then I started doing readings I started doing readings at a metaphysical bookstore, Mystic Journey bookstore, Claire from there. And then I started doing readings in the back of a bookstore at night in my neighborhood. And it just got to be like, it wasn't ending. Like words started to get around. And then people started showing up. And then more people started showing up. And then some actress posted my business card on Twitter. And then it was just like, I was like, oh, I can't work in the cafe. What am I doing? I'm exhausted. And then, so I was just like, I'm going to go full time. And it was also like this big pivot. I knew I had to take this leap of faith. I also filed bankruptcy. It was like 2000. I was like, I'm going to file bankruptcy and I'm going to go full time. And everyone's like, you're crazy. That's a bad idea. You need to get a job. You need to do this. And I was like, this is my job and I'm going to make it work. And it was intense. It was intense. Things really shifted when I was able to bring my art into the readings. And that was by making the decks. And at that same time, so that was like 2013, the first deck came out. And then my Instagram, the reach and the expansion of that, that's what really blew things up. And it was like I had two businesses going because I was my own distribution, my own, PR person, doing everything and doing readings. And it just got like, it was so intense.
That is a lot. Yeah. But I mean, everybody told you no.
Yeah.
And you did it anyway because you knew that that's what you were wanting to do. That was in your heart. And now look at all of this that you've been able to share with the world. I will tell you, during our sound baths I do with Adina Diaz, we use your deck, Sacred Symbols. And I know earlier you commented that it's simple. I find so much depth in it. And so do all the attendees, because they can look at it for themselves and they can, it's not all like drawn out for them. They can really just take it in as need be. And that's the magic of divinatory practices.
And I think I say that kind of like, in a bitter way when I say the simple, because I've heard it, so many people like reject it on that. But at the same time, the accessibility factor, where I've heard people say, I use this with my little toddler, or I use this with the elderly patients, or I use this with my nursing staff. And it's not too overwhelming for them or scary. And I think like there's a beauty in that. And I also tell people like, I hand drew all of those with a little Bic pen. They're not like done on the computer. Like I literally would sit there and like,
they're so amazing.
Thank you. But like, I'd hand draw all of these things, and there's intention in them. They're based on, and there's in the booklet too, there is a resource for where the symbols come from. That was the other thing. The educational aspect was important because there was also at the time, you saw a lot of things kind of going into the new age community, and there was a lot of appropriation or a lot of just not knowing. And I think it's just better to know where things come from. Yeah. There's more power in knowing where things come from than just like, I'm going to flippantly use this rune and you have no idea. Yeah. Like it was like in the 90s when everybody's wearing the kanji and they don't know what it actually says. And you're like, oh my goodness.
Totally.
No.
Yeah. Well, you have definitely paved a way for yourself, and I know you're going to continue to do so.
I'm like
And-
fingers crossed and hope so, because it's a little scary not really knowing fully what's next. But trust falling into it.
Yep, you have all of this that you've done. You just launched your book, and this is the big one right now. So, yeah, in your chart, like the things that I see mainly in your natal chart is just that you do have that deep entrepreneurial spirit. The Aquarius rising, I mean, you threw raves. I'm Aquarius rising. We just found out. We both did that. Yep. Yeah, I threw raves too. I do think strong Aquarius placements are the sign of the raver because
that makes sense.
It's
definitely
true because it's counterculture. I know when I was in the rave scene in the 90s and in the early 2000s, I was like, everyone should experience a rave. It is going to change their perception. They're going to be able to come together in community, love each other. Like back in the day, we used to say plur, which was peace, love, unity, and respect. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yes. Yeah.
So there's really something to the Aquarius signature and also raves and, just kind of being someone who really has the highest and best interest for humanity, who really wants to propel forward with them. And then with your Pisces sun, especially at the anaretic degree at 29 degrees, it's like there is this sense of urgency and need for healing, for sharing spirituality, for sharing that spiritual wisdom. And that's so beautiful. But yeah, I mean, there are so many different things in your chart, but I do love how it has really played into the work and the art and the beauty you've created, and not only created, just shared with the world and how they get to heal from it too. This is definitely a legacy. I wanted to, I asked you before, but I wanted to make sure, would you feel comfortable reading a little bit out of your book for the audience so they can all experience it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Love to. I was laughing because the first rave that I threw, I was in I think it still exists actually. I know Dave still does it. My business partner was a DJ Venom, and I think he still DJs as DJ Venom. But we had Volume Productions. But we used to do a house night once a month, and our first house night was called House of Leo, and we would go by the astrological signs each month, which was really funny. But yeah, I used to do all my flyers and PageMaker 2.0. Kinkos, yeah. I heard an O in the background. Kinkos. Yes.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
It was fun. It was a different time. I feel like I felt really, that was another thing about belonging. I felt like raves felt liminal to me. I felt like there was so many different people, so many walks of life. There's so much expression. And I don't know. I think I still get really excited when I think about, like, I got to dance with Lady Miss Keir in Worcester, Massachusetts. Like, like random, like the color raves and stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a trip.
Yep, absolutely. But there's a depth to raves, and when it's really just this moment in time. It is like 10 to 12 hours of dancing and hanging out and partying or whatever you do, connecting with people, and you have that memory. And I know there's not a direct connection with like healing, but in a way there is, because you have that time to get out of society, to get into something different, and to really just be able to reassess and maybe even realign your mentality, your values, how you connect with people, etc.
It helped me, like, for one, like connect with people. Like I couldn't connect with people really. I never felt like it never felt and I don't know if it's like the autistic part of me, like there is a loneliness in connecting with people, and I would go to events or things and never feel like I was really there. I'd be too focused on like, what's my arm doing? Don't say anything weird. You're staring for too long. You're not looking at them, or whereas with raves, it felt like I could almost like be liberated. I used to break dance a lot and stuff, you know, like there was a different kind of era of things. And also my mom hated the music, which was like a double win. you know, because my mom was a rock and roller. She used to follow bands around. She used to follow like Aerosmith and Alice Cooper. She was like a groupie. And I was like, yes. She'd be like, what is this garbage? I was like, yes, you hate it. I thought I'd read let me read the description for Blurred Timelines and then maybe read the actual first story I ever wrote for this book. But because a lot of this book is ancestor stories, but this Blurred Timelines, I think a lot of can relate more across the board. So it says, as I mentioned in the introduction to this book, we are exploring the tales and stories spoken in the voice of my ancestors after going into deep meditation to channel their wisdom and what they had to share with me in their voice. Blurred timelines are another area where the liminal exists everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. This chapter is dedicated to our past and parallel lives and all of the places and spaces in between. Ysidro is a past life story that has haunted me since childhood, but came to me only in parts and pieces over the years. The story was complete when I pilgrimaged to Kemet, aka the land of Egypt, in 2022. Freak Show is a parallel life I felt deeply fondly connected to. It was a life I often daydreamed of and wished for as a child. Two Sisters is a poem about me and what I thought was an imaginary sibling, but turned out to be an actual sibling. I just had not met her until 4 decades into my existence. And Before They Were Swans is my love note to Echo Park Lake in Los Angeles. It was my salvation, safe space, sanctuary, disembodied friend, and home away from home whenever I felt displaced or houseless during my 15 years in LA. Recognize that blurred timelines offer us spaces between the immediate 3-dimensional physical world and know that we can honor these spaces and places as a reference for our lessons and growth. They are not to be dismissed as pure imagination or fantasy, but perhaps considered as another uncharted territory for your personal growth and healing. So this is the story I wrote on the Nile, and it's the first story that I wrote for the book that set the precedence for the book, and it's just called Ysidro. Long ago, in the days of kings and queens, pharaohs, and the great Neteru, the gods, it was an honor to be chosen as a temple priestess of Osset, or Isis, as some of you may know her. The high priests and priestesses were decided at birth. Those who presented favorable astrological and planetary markings were selected to become devotees of the great goddess, the Divine Mother. So it was in this place that Ysidro, which means gifts of Isis, was born. When she was growing up, Ysidro did not connect with her family in the way that some children would, out of fear of it being too hard to let go. She knew from an early age that one day she would leave them forever. She was emotionally isolated, excluded, and not welcomed, so as to keep her detached from creating bonds. She was not allowed to play with the other children, nor did she receive the affection of her mother or father. She often wondered what she had done wrong in this life, never playing, never being loved, and being constantly tasked with cleaning, cooking, and tending to the needs of everyone but herself. Her parents believed that this was the start of her training. That was until her 8th birthday, the conclusion of her 8th rotation around the sun. This birthday was when the priests would fetch her to begin her journey to her new home at the Temple of Philae. She could not understand her parents' excitement at her leaving. She still did not understand in the middle of the night when the sky was dark. The priests came and they took her. She did not cry. She did not fuss. She did not utter a word as she walked away from her home, the only place she had ever known. She left in the middle of the night and watched her village disappear behind her. She felt numb as she climbed into the boat where she was bookended by 2 priests, 2 in the front and another behind her. There was no one to tell her what was happening. The only sounds were the murmur of voices and the lapping current of the dark Nile waters swiftly pulling them along through the night. She spent many days wandering, listening, and learning. On one day, it was how to make a medicinal salve, and on another, she learned songs of devotion to her now mother, the goddess Osset. As time grew forward and the seasons moved along, as the Nile flooded and receded, she became older and was excellent at everything she tried. A gifted oracle and healer, she understood Heka, the god of medicine, like no other, and became a solid ally to the other young girls arriving each year. She especially took to the ones who were afraid. She began teaching the children, helping them find their gifts. It was during those days that she began to see him, the son of the pharaoh. They were not far apart in age, and they recognized each other. He desperately wanted to learn what was so intriguing about this temple and what the offerings made to the Neteru were, but he was discouraged by his guardians from spending time there. There were a lot of strict rules about this. Only some were allowed to enter the temple in order to access the magic there. As the years went on, the days became nights, nights became weeks, and weeks became years, until they were full-grown adults, old enough to rule. The pharaoh's son began coming to Ysidro for lessons, and in secret, she taught him things about magic and about protecting himself from those who would smite him, those who would do anything to take his place, including his family members. Ysidro was different from so many at that time because she believed everyone should have access to their magic, which is why she would meet with him. However, this would be her downfall. There were spies within the kingdom who made the pharaoh aware of their meetings. The young man pleaded with Ysidro not to let anyone know about their secret meetings in the temple, because the result would be his execution and punishment. She agreed, but as she was making her way from the market back to the temple, bringing back supplies from a distance, she was knocked unconscious with a blunt object to the back of her head. Her next conscious memory was being at the bottom of a hole, able to see, but not move, scream, or shout. Someone had bludgeoned her in the head, but she was incapacitated and poisoned by something causing paralysis. So while alive, she could not ask for help or try to fight for her life. As she lay there, she becomes struck with the numbness of silence again, just as on the day she left. As the shovels began scraping and sand dropped like falling rain over her body, she was faced with the reality that her friend, someone she thought loved her, had betrayed her. He did not defend her. And one of the last things she saw before the sand plunged her into darkness was the pharaoh's son looking down at her. She was buried deep in the earth, in the desert, and she knew that she would not be reborn for some time, if ever. Her soul would be missing or lost in the duat, the underworld, without appropriate rituals and blessings. This was a mighty curse and dishonor. It wasn't until many years later, centuries, that she would awaken in the chambers of Anubis. He too knew the pain of being rejected, for he had been abandoned by his mother in the desert. Anubis had been now caring for her and safeguarding her body and spirit for centuries. As they emerged from the chambers and stood outside the temple, he said that it was time. He dressed her in linens and anointed her with flowers and oils. He even had a camel waiting for her. And then he said, "You have to go back now and show them who you are." Then with a hug, she was transported back to the land of the living, to Kemet, once her homeland, at the entrance of the temple of Karnak for redemption. Before Ysidro passed through the gates and entered the temple, Anubis placed the crown of Isis on Ysidro's head. She made her way through the temple into the back chamber, where she placed offerings at the feet of Sekhmet, the protector of the pharaohs. Remembering the crime she committed, Ysidro fell to her knees, bringing her head to the stone floor of the temple. She broke the laws by sharing the teachings with the pharaoh's son. This she understood. She could not help but also feel immense betrayal that he did not defend her. As she began weeping out of relief for having escaped the duat, Sekhmet spoke to her and said, "I do believe the punishment was justified and necessary, but I see it was severe and unnecessarily severe. Please do not worry anymore. Do not concern yourself with the karma or justice of those involved in your punishment, but know that it is taken care of. Your retribution is acknowledged, but no longer through pain after spending thousands of years suffering. Ysidro is now free after thousands of years of redemption. Her punishment will no longer require suffering as the antidote, but in honor of learning the importance of her journey, she will continue to teach children and feed stray cats as an act of gratitude and reward." That's it.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that was the first thing you wrote when you were in Egypt.
Yeah. A lot of it was, one of the first temples was at Karnak, and we went there at like 4 a.m, the group of us, and 4 at a time into the back chamber. But as we were walking up, if you look up pictures of Karnak, there's like these archways, and like as we're walking through, it's just, I remember it being cold and like feeling like pieces, almost like soul retrieval, like pieces coming back into my body. I was like in pain. I was like, why does this hurt so bad? But yeah, 4 at a time. And I don't know. I know there is like some of these, like there's like pictures or things you can look up of Karnak and this particular statue of Sekhmet. She's the lion-headed goddess, where she's like alive, and that temple is alive. Like it was vibrating, and it was one of these moments where I heard her just say like, "You've been doing this for so long." And it's like parts of the story have been coming to me for years, like, but through different things. Like I'd done a meditation, and in the meditation, I saw myself in this tomb with Anubis. And like, there were so many pieces. And then in being on the boat, the sound of the Nile is very specific. It's different than just being like on a river. I don't know how to describe it. It's just this lapping waters, and then you hear the call to prayer like throughout the day, and it's pretty potent. So it got me in this, being on the water for 4 days, like all this imagery, and yeah. So that's where the first story came through.
It transports you. The way you write, the characters, all of it. I just do feel like it helps you to be transported to a different place. So that was truly amazing. If you guys are interested in more of Marcella's book, just so you know, we do carry it here, and her decks as well. And yeah, I just can't wait to dig into the whole thing. So I've now experienced 3 chapters, so I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, but okay, we're probably going to close out though. So I just wanted to thank you, Marcella. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for sharing your story. Thank you for allowing us to dive into your birth chart. Thank you for your beautiful work that you bring into the world. It's just truly amazing. And I did want to open up the space for Q&A. Does anyone have any questions for Marcella? You do? Okay. If you want to come up to the mic, that would be awesome.
Question, but I also had a little shout out for lunar moth from the sacred. Number 33, I think, lunar moth of the sacred symbols.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My patient pulled that this week, and it's been up in the office. There have been so many really incredible messages that like have been passed on in the office.
Oh,
I feel like every time I'm saying something, the moth is there with me. So simple, but the complexity in them is like, yeah, it reaches beyond. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is this on? Yeah. I had a question about when you were talking about your journey with how you're moving forward in the next phase of your life. A question came to me about, does it feel like there's any connection to a different ancestral lineage that might be driving that? And then I guess the secondary question has to do with, I just got this like vision of you encountering teachers on that journey. And I was wondering what other teachers you've encountered in your life. So I guess it's like maybe a 3-part question, just about your ancestral lineages that have influenced you, more about that. And then also just teaching and the next phase of meeting people in person as a teacher and meeting other teachers in person.
So I would say this, the first thing that comes to mind is I feel like I'm going to be leaning more into the person I can be that was loved, and meaning as opposed to being the person who did things out of necessity and survival. Like, who am I when I come from a place of fullness? I think that in terms of like ancestral lineage, I'm so mixed. I mean, if I'm putting out a recipe of who I am, my father is Wampanoag, which is native to New England area, and Filipino. My mother's Italian, Portuguese, North African. I think my purpose is to be a expression of them, but without trying to find a tradition to like narrowly follow, and make my own expression of that to be a good ancestor. In terms of teachers and meeting people and moving forward, I've had this really amazing, and he actually was kind enough to leave me a quote on the book, but Don Jose Ruiz and his father is Don Miguel Ruiz. They wrote the 4 Agreements. To count them as teachers, they've been really incredible. I would love to work with them a little bit more in depth. I would love to work with Dr. Estes, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves. I hadn't, and it's funny, one of her students is a really dear friend of mine, and I would love to connect with her now that I'm in a place where I can be able to appreciate and absorb and sit in that energy. And then also just being open to meeting people. I think there was a lot of souring, like being in survival mode. And it wasn't that I wasn't open to hearing other people, but I was just focused on what's next. So, and then also not finding my birth father until 42. I'm 48 now. It has opened up this new connection to lineages that I want to say that it would be not appropriate for me to fully dive into those practices, but be more of an observer and an appreciation of them, not a teacher of them. I think if I was supposed to be, I would have been presented with that at a younger age, or maybe perhaps it's something that's on the horizon. I never think I'm going to be here for very long. When it comes to mortality, and I know that like it's, which I think is interesting, but, and I think that never say never is what I'm getting at, is like, it could happen at a point where I dive deeper into, learning more in that way, or a particular pathway. But there's so much to uncover and discover, as I'm finding over like even the last 6 years, particularly with like all the Filipino stuff that was suppressed, like literally getting books on Filipino magic and the Visayas, because that's where my grandfather is from. He's from the Visayas. They were the tattooed people. They believed in witchcraft. They believed in magic. They believed in like, I feel like I'm at the beginning of learning. So I don't have any business teaching it yet, but I'm open to what's next. So
Thank you.
yeah.
You remembered. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want to use the mic.
I think I'm always been curious about magic and ritual. Where do you get your inspiration for magic and ritual? Is it reading a lot of stuff, or is it all just intuitive? Or I'd like to hear more about that.
Well, it's interesting. Actually, I was talking to Jonah, who is here recently, and we did like a look at my chart, and we were talking about how there's a lot of like kitchen witchery stuff in my chart that like I've come from past lives, and I was like, oh, that's the intuitive stuff where I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go to the cabinet. I'm going to do this thing. It's very much like being a kid again and playing. When it comes to the ritual magic, and he was saying like, I'm supposed to step more into that as I get older, like the more formal, that I will say has been this learning process of starting to read about different legacies of magic and those ritual practices, and again, being in that absorption data collection mode versus I'm going to execute this Saint Cyprian ritual and do this thing. Like, I want to learn more as much as I can about it. But what I have done pretty intense ritual, it's been with groups actually. Like when we went to Egypt with 22 teachings, that's a hermetic magic school. So following these principles of hermeticism and going through ritual magic in that way, I've not done it solo. I've done it like as a group, as a collection of people, to foster like turning points in people's lives or initiations, helping other people activate their magic. So, and the other thing I just want to quickly say, to address like my Wampanoag side, there is a Reclamation Language Act that's happening, and there's that's the other way too. I'm trying to connect through language and learning language. So, shockingly, they're reclaiming the language based on a King James Bible that was found, but it was written in Wampanoag. Yeah, so like there's a lot of like re-education of things that were lost, but like through these really like colonial tools, which is kind of bizarre. But when you're so far removed from it, kind of trying to find your way back and piece it together. Also, food is another way. I always tell people, if you're having a hard time connecting to those lineages and those ancestors, what did they eat? Because that, I have no words for how profound food is, or drink of your ancestors. There's like a feeling, it feels different in the body. And that is also kind of a way of connecting to the magic of them as well. And I'm trying to find happiness with my Italian side. I have a lot of resentment with my Italian side and anger about certain behaviors or things, but I'm learning that's not all of them. You know, there are pieces and layers in here that you have to find. And there's even the folk magic in that as well. I don't know if I'll go to Italy though, to like, you know, be like, okay, I'm going to go study with the Gennare, like be a segnatore. Like, I feel like it's too rigid. It's so Catholic and rigid, but like, it's beautiful. Oh, cool. Teach me the Malokia. Like, but I don't know. I still don't. I think that part of me is to make a third rail, another option for people where it's not bypassing respect, but it's allowing you to formulate your own path, your own current. And I think that's going to take a while.
Yeah, it could. I mean, I see what Jonah's talking about, but your North Node is in the 8th house. So really stepping into, quote unquote, the occult and, you know, kind of elevating in that way, using it in like a graduated way. But your South Node in Aries, yeah, like that is playful. And it's kind of like exactly what he said. So that makes sense. I do love what you just said about food and connecting to your ancestors in that way. And that's so important, even how it's prepared, you know, I think that that's a big thing. Yeah. Thank you, Marcella.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I always say I'm going to be, once I get like 55, I'm going to go into like witchy burlesque.
Yeah.
Like,
that sounds cool.
I was like, does that fulfill the North Node mission? Like,
it could. I mean, like, yeah, it definitely could. Pluto's not far from it. So that could just be that like kind of sexy sex element of it,
right,
you know?
I was like, let's just, that's the second half we're going to go for.
I love it. Does anyone have any other questions or even questions about things I've talked about in Marcella's birth chart that maybe weren't clear or anything at all? Yeah.
I think, you know, space and creating those places for ourselves where we feel at home. But I'm curious, you know, from the astrological perspective, what do you see? Or, I mean, maybe you don't work with that, but I mean, the Egyptian story and even Rhode Island and now LA and now here, I mean, there's a lot of locations.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious if you've looked at that and or what you might be able to talk about from that perspective.
Sure. I have not looked. So that's called astrocartography, and that is actually a technique that you can learn, and I do know it. I have not looked at Marcella's chart in that way, but I will say that, one thing about her chart is she has Uranus in the ninth house, and it's in Scorpio. So when we look at the outer planets, which are Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, they're generational planets. So if you're born in a certain year, you're going to share that with your entire generation. It's actually like more than a year. It could range from 14 years to 20 years, depending on the planet. But that's an aside. But with Uranus in the ninth, a lot of times the sparks of inspiration, the sparks of education even are going to come from traveling to foreign countries in order to bring that back, to embody it and share it with others, or just embody it for herself. So going to Egypt for Marcella was probably a very important trip, and I would like to look at the exact dates of that at some point. But I do know it was during the Scorpio Taurus eclipses, and she does have Uranus in Scorpio in the ninth house, so that was being activated. It's like, what kind of aha moment Uranus is going to be activated when she goes to a foreign country ninth house? So yeah, that is important. But astrocartography, that's a whole nother thing. We could probably do a whole podcast on that.
I love astrocartography.
It's very cool.
But even like Neptune, you said, because I have Neptune right in Sag.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like even the psychic work, and it's in the 11th house, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
10th house and
10th.
Placidus. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But that's your career and your work.
I say it's career. It's also
Yeah.
like people, how they see you, right? Like, like
your
that kind of-
legacy.
right?
Yeah.
So, and I think, and then tying in astrocartography, I know LA is very Neptune for me. I have a strong Neptune line there. So I think it was really good for my psychic work, right? Moving here. So LA, I was like between Neptune and Pluto, do not recommend. Because it's like, but in here, I'm between Venus and Pluto. I have Venus and Pluto. So to me, it makes sense that like those shifts started happening for sure. I think with Egypt, I have a strong Mercury line there. So I was thinking writing, communicating.
Oh,
yeah. So yeah, I love astrocartography for like looking at those things, but there's like that was definitely when I leave. Like I had that experience. I went to Scotland when I was in my early 20s, changed my life. And it was like going far away, coming back and being like, whoa, everything's got to be different. And I think it was shortly after that I moved to New York. So it was like, okay, I got to get out of Rhode Island. So.
And the Uranus, and I mean, yeah, like definitely going to those foreign countries for the big aha moments is going to be big. I would like to have you back on the podcast at some point to talk about your ancestral lineage if you're open to that, because we've looked at those charts.
Oh yeah.
Just briefly and casually, but you gave me the dates. And
we looked
I
at
was
King
really,
Philip's War and Metacom, like the timing of that, the Great Swamp Massacre, and because I was like, I know, I was like, I've been there, I was there.
And a lot of it did tie into your South Node. And South Node sometimes, depending on the camp of astrology that you practice, it could be your gifts that you came to this world with, or your past lives, etc., like we talked about earlier. So yeah, that'll be fascinating. You'll have to come back for that, and we'll do another one. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. But Marcella, again, thank you so much. And if people are interested in finding you and your work, where can they find you on the World Wide Web? And
my website is marcellakroll.com, and my Instagram is just at Marcella Kroll. And I have a lot of like the publications and stuff are linked on my website. So if you're looking for any of the stuff that Union Square published, or actually did the tarot book with Tashem, that's up there as well. And any classes or things like that, I will be posting there.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I'll put all that in the show notes too for the YouTube listeners, so you guys can check her out. Also, tonight, if you are interested in Marcella's book, we do have it here, as well as the Sacred Symbols deck and some of your original artwork, correct?
Yes, I brought
As far as the cape.
I brought some prints and these travel altars. They're like little travel altars for abundance and protection. And then there is one cape left from the LA show. It's a talismanic cape. That one's called As Above, So Below. And they are meant to help you through it's for ritual wear, essentially, or an important moment. The snake on the back is a pep, which represents, again, the underworld and coming out of it. And there are a lot of symbols to help cut through negative energy or protect you and bring good alliances. Those are on the front. And Eye of Ra and Eye of Horus as well. So there was 3 capes made for that show. That's the only one I have left, but
Yeah, if you guys are interested, check all of that out. But I also want to address the audience. Thank you guys all for being here in person. This is so important, and it's so great to come into community with you all. So thanks for your energy. Thank you for being here tonight. And that's it. We will see you on the next podcast. Thank you all for being here.